This week on the Paddock Press Report, recapping Royal Ascot, the prestigious meeting, some of the world's top turf horses all clash on the turf, and some thrilling finishes. Plus, some of America's best three-year-olds also meet on the dirt in Ohio. A race calling legend, Tom Durkin. Of course, you've heard his calls. Now you can read his book. He joins us to talk about the book and his work and all the years in the industry. Plus, a look at this weekend's Stephen Foster Stakes, a real clash with so many different Horse of the Year contenders, some of the best classic division horses, taking to the Churchill Downs Dirt for closing weekend. Welcome and thank you for joining me for the Paddock Press Report. I'm Timothy Lateau. Royally, it was one of the biggest weeks of racing, the Royal Ascot meeting in Berkshire, England. Some of the turf's biggest stars all clashing there at Royal Ascot for that incredible meeting. Kicking things off on Tuesday for the Group 1 action was the Queen Anne Stakes, mile and a quarter race. Race features 4-year-olds and up, and the favorite was Notable Speech, winner of the Breeders' Cup Mile in 2024, as well as the 2000 Guineas winner. Godolphin also had a strong chance with Opera Ballo, but Notable Speech found himself in deep water in this mile-long race. And 59 to 1 long shot, 10 Bob Tony came rolling from last. He collared Opera Ballo in More Thunder right at the line to win by half a length. And also on Tuesday, the opening day of the meeting was the King Charles III Stakes, run at 5 furlongs, a really quick sprint, but a massive field of 26 horses lined up for the race. Overpass was the morning line favorite from Australia, but he was outpaced in the closing stages as French trained Brievka in the Green Silks took the lead. Mission Central powered over the top of the field with a late burst along the grandstand. He won by a nose in a thrilling finish. And also on Tuesday was probably one of the most hyped races of the meeting, the St. James Palace Stakes, because it featured a rematch between the top two finishers of this year's 2000 Guineas, between Stade, the runner-up, and Bo Echo, who won the race. Of course, the St. James Palace Stakes is also run at a mile, so a real even rubber match here. Both colts sat at the back of the pack until the home stretch. When Stade came through on the inside, Bo Echo battled on from the outside. They went head and head all the way to the wire, with Bo Echo coming out by a long nose on top. Stade's jockey Ryan Moore was suspended for 3 days for careless riding for allowing his horse to drift left-handed without correcting him. That occurred shortly after the start of the race. Meanwhile, during that time as well, Christophe Soumillon aboard Stade's stablemate Puerto Rico received an 8-day suspension himself. Stewards say he intended to give an advantage to another horse from the same stable, and Stade, of course, because they say that he moved Puerto Rico away from the rail to ensure a clear run for Stade up the inside. And another eagerly awaited clash of champions came on Wednesday, of course, in the Prince of Wales's Stakes at a mile and a quarter for 4-year-olds and up. This test featured multiple Group 1 winner Ombudsman, who met Arc de Triomphe champion Dairies for the first time. Both horses sat towards the rear of the field, but Ombudsman impressively kicked it into high gear down the stretch. The filly Mini Hawk was second. Dairies closed to be third. And on Thursday, the longest Group 1 race of the meeting, the Ascot Gold Cup, featured a head-to-head battle between Scandinavia, the St. Ledger winner from last year, and then also Trawlerman, the defending champion of this race. In this 2.5 mile test, Trawlerman was the longtime frontrunner, while Scandinavia stalked from third. And what a stretch duel that unfolded here. Trawlerman repeatedly turned back challenges from Scandinavia, but eventually the younger colt Scandinavia got the best of Trawlerman right on the wire by a head. And on Friday, 3-year-old sprinted in the Commonwealth Cup. The favorite was Venetian Sun, a filly. The filly raced in mid-pack on the far side before making a move, a really well-timed move there because she nearly nailed Spicy Marg by a head right there on the wire. The other big race on Friday was the Coronation Stakes, restricted to 3-year-old fillies. Of course, Aidan O'Brien held a real formidable hand in this race, with his top two contenders in Precise and True Love. Precise won the Irish 1,000 guineas for him, while True Love won the English 1,000 guineas. Each defeated the other in their respective wins, so this mile-long race was sort of a rubber match. And for the first time this year, #1 stable jockey Ryan Moore chose his mount correctly. He held Precise towards the back of the pack. True Love followed her. Both made Both made their way up through the stretch, but True Love couldn't get by Precise. And in the final Group 1 race of the meeting that was on Saturday, the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Stakes, Jolie Star, a fan favorite Aussie mare, went off as the favorite.
They're heading down towards the final furlong. Jolly Star now makes her move. Lugal goes with her. Regional between them. Satono Rev down the outside. Then Kate Almerac. Stolen Kiss is running on very well from the back as well. It's Jolly Star from Satono Rev and Stolen Kiss. Almerac the far side. Jolly Star, Satono Rev. Stolen Kiss. A four-way go. Almerac.
Well, from the Royal County to the Forest City stateside, some of America's top 3-year-olds took to the dirt at Thistledown, just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, for the Grade 3 Ohio Derby. $500,000 on the line.
Here comes Oselli. Oselli up on the outside to challenge Desert Gate. These two turn for home together. Oselli has taken the lead. Desert Gate is digging in. Chip Honcho's right there, a furlong to go. Oselli in front. Chip Honcho right alongside, a 16th to go. Chip Honcho takes the lead. Oselli trying to battle back, but Chip Honcho wins the Ohio Derby.
Well, if you've been a racing fan for the last 15 years or 45 years, I can promise you that you've heard this man's calls. Tom Durkin, legendary race caller for both NBC and NYRA, towards the end of his career for decades at both institutions. Before that, he worked across the country from tracks in the Midwest to up and down the East Coast, calling both thoroughbreds and standardbreds. Truly a legend of the sport. We talked about his new book that has just come out. Well, it is a tremendous honor to be joined by Tom Durkin, one of the most iconic voices in all of sports, and certainly a legend when it comes to announcing horse races. From
you're really lowering the bar for legends right now, but go ahead.
No, not at all, Tom, not at all. Yeah, just from the Midwest to the East Coast, up and down it, and so many different Triple Crown and Breeders' Cup races, and some iconic moments in history and in sport. Tom has called it all. So it is such an honor to be joined by you this morning, Tom. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, you've got this new book that came out, A Life's Calling. Your memoir, kind of talk about that. Why now, and what was that process kind of like writing the book?
I never wanted to write a book. And I certainly didn't want to write a book about me. I'm not my favorite subject, I can tell you. And there's also, when you get into this deep dive into yourself, when you write a biography, there was a lot of trepidation there. I was kind of afraid what I might find, The self-introspection leads you to places like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, maybe I shouldn't have. But all in all, it started 10 years ago, and play golf with a bunch of my buddies, and this one guy, Rich Cristiano, just kept on, after golf, you'd, go out and have lunch, drink beers, and I'd wind up telling stories, and he said, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. Yeah. But then out of the blue, about a year and a half ago, I guess, maybe 2 years now, Paul Volpone and Lenny Shulman, both very accomplished racing writers. I think they've got 30 books in between them. They said, we'd like to do your biography. Well, okay, I'm not going to get any calluses doing it, so let's go ahead.
Yeah. How long did that process take? You talked about kind of the first conversations were 10 years ago almost. How long has it kind of taken to really gather everything that you needed for the book and put that together?
A couple months. The process was Lenny lives in Kentucky, Paul lives in Queens, and I live in Saratoga. And so, it was all done on the phone and whatever. Over the period of a couple months, they interviewed me a bunch of times. And they knew where they wanted to go with the book. They know all about writing books and all about the publication business and publishing business. And so I know nothing of that at all. So, and they formatted the book in a very interesting way where I didn't have to talk about myself so much. They had a lot of other people talk about me. And, it was funny. I never read the book until the hard copy came out about 6 weeks ago, maybe, not even that. And because I was always they would write something and send me the chapters and, proofread it and whatever. Changed very little myself. And I read this, I took a day aside, read the book. and closed it. And I thought, you know what? When I die, I think I'd like to come back as me.
I like it. Yeah, yeah. It's a really a wonderful life and so many great stories, I'm sure, from all different points of your career and throughout your life. Do you have any kind of favorite memories or things that are in the book that, you want to kind of dish on that, readers might be able to expect?
Well, the very first line of the book is November 10th, 1984 was the date that changed my life forever. And that was the very first Breeders' Cup. Less than 2 years prior to calling the first Breeders' Cup, I was the track announcer at Cahokia Downs in East St. Louis, Illinois. And for all intents and purposes, my name to the general racing public was Tom Who? Uh, but I did get hired to call that first Breeders' Cup, and it changed my life. That's absolutely for sure. It changed the industry completely. It changed Pat Day's life. Pat Day was a well-regarded Midwestern jockey, but didn't have any national stature that he certainly has now. But when he won that first Breeders' Cup Classic with Wild again, that put him into the stratosphere that he circled in for decades. And but the very first Breeders' Cup, every year on before Breeders' Cup, I would go into this 2 month training, Breeders' Cup training, from Labor Day to Breeders' Cup Day. No drinking. Can you imagine exercising every day? How crazy is that? Eating well, hypnosis, meditation, blah 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 blah. But didn't have a drink for 2 months, and then so it's first Breeders' Cup Day, and I've got this uh, lanyard with my press credentials. It says Tom Durkin, NBC Sports, access everywhere. So I said, hell, I'll go, so I need a beer. And so I take my binoculars and I walk down the stairwell and I go, oh, that looks like a party. I'll go in there. So there's this guy who's obviously a security guard and is, talking into his wrist and the sunglasses and the whole thing. And I said, well, could you watch my binoculars here? I got to run over to the other side of the room and get a beer. And he goes, yeah, yeah, sure, no problem. He goes, but when my man goes, I got to go. And I go, yeah, okay, who's your man? And he looks over his shoulder. President Gerald R. Ford. Then I look into the room. Is that Frank Sinatra sitting next to Elizabeth Taylor? There's Fred Astaire, Zsa Zsa Gabor, Cary Grant, Gregory Peck. Are you kidding me? This is not Cahokia Downs. It was a spectacular, spectacular day in so many ways.
Yeah, that's really that is a wild story. I love that. And then you think that the Breeders' Cup was that really kind of a breakthrough moment for your career, or did you
Oh,
ever feel like you got a big break?
absolutely, yes. Dave Johnson was by far and away the number one race caller in the country. But he obviously that was his job to have. But I don't think he wanted to do that job. I think he wanted to be the host or co-host, and so he and Dick Enberg, Broadcasting Hall of Famer, were the co-host for that. So the announcer job came open, and Pete Axtell, who worked for NBC Sports, I knew him from the one season that I worked at Hialeah, and he put in a good word, and that was it.
Yeah, yeah, really, yeah, led to decades of so many great Breeders' Cup calls and eventual, Triple Crown races too with NBC and most probably notably too, working for Naira all those years too and all the
Yeah, but
great
you
calls.
say Triple Crown races. Yeah, I call the races. I never called a Triple Crown winner. 0 for 8.
Wow.
0 for 8 or 0 for 9 if you want to count I'll Have Another, who was scratched the morning of the race. So I 1 year left to go on my contract at Naira, and I just wasn't feeling it. And about coming back, I didn't work during the winters. I lived in Italy, and I was always at the end of my hiatus in Italy. I was always ready to get rolling, going back. And that year, I just wasn't feeling it like I always did. And so I just thought about it, and I asked the folks if I could get out of the final year of my 5 year contract, and they tried to talk me out of it, but they let me go. And so that very next year is when American Pharoah becomes the first horse in 37 years to win the Triple Crown. So if there's one reason why he won the Triple Crown, it's me, because I didn't call that race.
I do think so. There's a lot of superstition. Yeah, yeah. I know
It's
too,
fact.
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, it is. It is true. I know, obviously with TV rights, things like that, a lot of times broadcasters and announcers don't always get to pick the races that they're calling, and some of that stuff is kind of predetermined because of that. Are there any other races too that you kind of look at, from kind of any point during your career or before or after in history that you would have liked to have been a part of, and didn't get a chance to call?
I virtually called every good horse that ran in America from 1982 to 2014. However, I stopped the Breeders' Cup at 2010. It moved to another network from NBC to ESPN. The only really good horse I didn't call was Zenyatta, and I really wish I could have called some of her races because what a joy to. I love calling horses that come from way out of it. They're just fun, and they're coming, and it looks like they're desperately beaten, and it just adds a layer of drama that's kind of extra special. But I never, but what how can I wish for anything? I had a dream career, you know. So so I didn't call Zenyatta, but that would have been fun. But uh, I called just name a horse.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, Donna Brothers, your colleague from NBC, she said the
Hmm.
same thing about Zenyatta because obviously, with ESPN and ABC having the rights to those Breeders' Cup races, then that I didn't even think of that being the logical answer, but it really is for
Yeah, NBC.
a lot of
We had the
NBC.
Breeders' Cup from I think 2000, 1984 until 210, maybe
Yeah,
something like that.
maybe a couple years before that because I think Zenyatta would have been like '09.
Okay, yeah, or maybe
Yeah,
201 for yeah.
yeah.
We had the Triple Crown, but not the Breeders' Cup. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so many people I think have a lot of their own favorite Tom Durkin calls, whether it's a race on NBC or a race in New York. A lot of great traverses in there, a lot of great Breeders' Cup races. Do you have any kind of favorite race in for yourself, Tom? I know that there's thousands to pick from, but
Yeah, yeah, and it's like your own kids. Who's your favorite, whatever. But I was just given the opportunity to call so many great events. I mean, 20 some years of Breeders' Cup, a dozen Triple Crowns, and all those years at Naira and Saratoga and Belmont. It goes on and on and on. So it's hard to pick. But the co-authors, Paul and Lenny, wanted my top five. Let's see if I can remember which ones they were. Holy Bull's Travers Stakes, Personal Ensign's defeat of Winning Colors in the distaff of '89, I guess. Um, let's see, Rachel Alexandra winning the Woodward and the Wild Again Breeders' Cup. Yeah,
definitely, yeah, all
but
really,
for various reasons, which I explain in the book.
yeah, yeah, all really iconic moments, and yeah, the calls behind all those. I've watched them all a lot of times myself, so they're definitely
Oh,
burned.
the other one was Victory Gallop and Real Quiet in the Belmont Stakes, which was crazy.
Yeah, yeah, Triple Crown on the line, and yeah, inches. That's
Yeah, and of course, I was calling it, so Real Quiet didn't win it. No, that's just
yeah, right. Yeah, that's how
guilty.
that works. Yeah. Um, and were there any kind of like surprises that you think viewers might be or that readers might be surprised to read about you in the book, or were you kind of surprised by anything too? Writing anything that kind of came to mind?
Yeah, I think readers might be surprised at how much stress got to me. I was calling the Kentucky Derby, and I gave up that job. I mean, if you're a race caller, that's it. That's the epitome. And I just didn't want to deal with the stress anymore. I was just got to. I mean, I did everything you can possibly do. I had a hypnotist in Louisville. I spent a couple days on his couch before I called the Derby. I took this drug called Inderol that kept my hands steady from from the nerves and controlled my breathing and what have you, self-hypnosis. So I did everything I could, but then I just said, you know what? What if you just don't do it? What if you just don't call the Kentucky Derby? And I made the decision to walk away from that job.
Yeah. I know a lot of fans, I'm sure, wish that that wasn't the case, but obviously, yeah, putting yourself first and making the decision, that takes a lot of guts on its own.
Yeah, it was not an easy decision, I can tell you. As a matter of fact, I changed my mind twice with NBC. I remember I called him up on the first of the year, Ken Shanzer, who was ran the sports department there, and I said, Ken, I can't do it. My contract was up for renewal, and I go, I can't do it. And then I called him back 3 days later, and I don't know what I was thinking of. It was crazy. And then I called him 3 days after that. I said, this time I mean it, Ken. I just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And what's retirement like for you nowadays, Tom? I know not, there's not the
Lunch is very key. Lunch and golf. But I do teach public speaking at my local high school here, Saratoga Central Catholic. And the book has taken up a good deal of my time of late. So the teaching and I've been busy with the teaching and what have you. And so I haven't taken a really good vacation for a while. My vacations are 2-monthers. I work at the horse racing museum here down the street in Saratoga. Give tours, and I'm on the board and do various things for them. But this year, I said, you know what? I'm just going to get away from Saratoga. So I'm going to be living in London during July and August this year, not Saratoga.
Or yeah. Have you been to London, or what do you plan to do there?
Yeah, I've been, just to see the Tower of London and the Change in the Guard and Wave of the Queen and all that BS. But it's a great city, and also very close to Paris, which is the other great European capital. So I've rented a flat in an area called Bloomsbury, and it's two tube stops away from St. Pancras Station, and so I can have breakfast in London, and I can be in Paris in 2 hours and 10 minutes for lunch, and then come back home for dinner. So I'll be popping in and out of Paris. I'll probably go over to Ireland, hop over there. I've got friends and relatives and Irish racing and whatever. So, but London's just I'm a big theater person. I've been in several plays since I retired. I like acting, and so the theater scene in London is beyond New York, if you want my opinion.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of racing fans out there in Europe who they'll know you, if you go to the track. So yeah,
It's surprising. I'm so surprised that years ago, uh, 1990 maybe. So I was working for NBC, and we were doing the Irish Derby. So we got there a couple days early, and so I went to this town called Kilkenny. It's not too far from where the Cur is, old medieval town. So I went there. I'm sitting at the bar. It's like noon, and I order a beer. And Smithwick's is what you drink in Kilkenny, by the way. So I got me a pint of Smithwick's, and I'm sitting at the bar. And there's another guy at the end of the bar, and the barkeep behind the bar. And so I see the Racing Post over there, and on the other side of the bar. And I asked guy, I said, "Can I see the paper there?" And he goes, "Yank, you wouldn't want to see that. It's just about the horses." And I go, "Yeah, I know. That's why I want to read it." And he goes, "You're here for the Derby, are you?" And I go, "Yes, yes." He goes, "Came all the way just to see the race." I go, "No, no, I'm working for NBC Sports." And the guy looks at me right in the eye and goes, "This is Kilkenny Island, 5,000 miles from my house. You wouldn't be Tom Durkin, would you? Crazy." So the impact of the Breeders' Cup was so international that the bartender, at Joe's Pub in Kilkenny knows who the announcer at the Breeders' Cup was.
yeah, that is really, yeah, that's a cool story. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And do you have any kind of points of advice or anything that you think that someone who's looking to get into the horse racing industry, or or broadcasting, or really kind of anything for any, young professional or someone looking for a career change, anything that you'd want
I
them?
always tell them one thing. First of all, 1 in every 12 million people in America is a racetrack announcer. 1 in 12 million. So kids say, I'd like to be a racetrack announcer. And I always tell them the same thing. Don't always pursue your dream. Always pursue your dream, but you must get educated before you can go off into this 1 in 12 million tangent. But it's important that you at least pursue your dream, as difficult as it is, because later on in life, you're going to say, if you didn't try, if you didn't at least try, you're not going to say, boy, I wish I would have tried that. And you lead a life of professional regret. If you tried and you couldn't get it, which is understandable when the odds are 12 million to 1, you tried, and there's not that regret involved there. I told the same thing to a little kid years ago at the Saratoga. He would always stand down at the finish line, and he'd look up at me. And every Saturday I'd see him up. He'd be looking up at me, which is the same thing I did in Chicago when the races were on. And Phil Georgieff, my idol, was the announcer there. I'd stand at the finish line, and I wouldn't look at the races. I'd look up at Phil Georgieff, just watch him call the race. So this little kid, about 13 years old, I guess at the time, at Saratoga, writes me a letter like I did to Phil Georgieff. And I wrote him back and I told him, pursue your dream and pursue your education. That little kid has just called 15 Kentucky Derbies, Travis Stone at Churchill Downs.
That's really something. Yeah. Yeah. You never know. Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What an incredible thing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tom, I know you're such a, yeah, just really an icon to the industry and a hero for so many, myself included. And it's just been such an honor to get to talk with you. And yeah, I know that readers will have so much to indulge in your book, A Life's Calling. I'm sure it's just a masterpiece of autobiography.
You and I, by the way, before we get off, we're both from Chicago. What is your opinion on the Hammond, Indiana Bears?
Being a Bears fan myself, we'd like to have seen them stay in Chicago. And being a racing fan myself, I think it'd be nice to have seen them, stay at Arlington Park, in Arlington.
No brainer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Like it's such a tragedy what happened to the place. So, for a great, sport of another kind to at least be there, on the gravesite of Arlington, I think that would have been a better use of that land. Now the grandstand's been torn down, so it's.
Oh yeah, I've been by it. I mean, that's where I misspent my youth on weekends at Arlington Park. Sure, very sad.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so yeah, it's a sad thing, and I think with the grandstand being torn down, it's you know, it'd be nice if they could resurrect the track, but the grandstand, is not going to be the same. I'm hopeful that the track can get resurrected or something like that.
That's not happening, but
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just wishful
Yeah.
dreaming.
I'm going to be at Aqueduct June 28th, which will be the last day of racing ever at Aqueduct. So Aqueduct, which was king for a long time, but it just doesn't make sense. I mean, there's another racetrack 8 miles away. It's the 21st century. That's just stupid. So Belmont is going to be the new thing in New York. I think it's going to be great. And we bid adieu to Aqueduct like we did to Calder, Hollywood, Arlington. The list is expanding, sadly.
Yeah, yeah, it is very tough to see those tracks go, and of course they leave so many memories for the fans who grew up going to those tracks and spent so many days there. So yeah, a lot of great horses that have graced those tracks too.
You probably never were at the old Arlington Park, were you? You're too young for that, aren't you?
Yeah, no, yeah, just kind of later on 2000s. I was
Oh yeah,
the one, so yeah, yeah.
yeah. The old place burned down, and yeah, that's where I went to the races in Chicago, and the only time I've seen a race at the new Arlington Park was on Breeders' Cup Day when I called the races there. It's the only day I've ever been there at the new track, but I'm not going back now.
Yeah, yeah. It was 2002. Was that kind of one of the biggest highlights of your career? You think kind of like making a full circle moment back to Chicago?
Oh, one of the biggest highlights of my career was the party we had that night. Because we had 200 people. I'm from Chicago, and my friends and relatives, there was 200 of us. I always used to have a party after Breeders' Cup because I wanted to break out after that monastic life that I led for 2 months. And so it was a traveling show. We minimal 40. My ticket order was minimal 40 every year, no matter where we were in California and Texas, Florida, whatever. And in Chicago, I said, yeah, guys, I need 200 tickets. But God love them, they weren't freebies, I can tell you that. But the party that night was mythic.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure any party with Tom Durkin is at has got to be just as legendary as the race calling. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm very good at throwing parties. Actually, that's in the book too. I'm very good at throwing parties. I have vast experience in that field of endeavor.
yeah, well, yeah. Party on and read on. Life's Calling is out now on bookstores shelves, so be sure to get a copy and read all about it.
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble online, and whatever. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks for your time, Tom. I appreciate it.
All right, Tim, I enjoyed it. Thanks.
This upcoming Saturday at Churchill Downs, a major clash of America's dirt titans in the Stephen Foster Stakes, a Grade 1 race, $2 million purse. It's been upgraded because it's such a valuable race with such high-class horses in it. The race features a rematch between the top two finishers of the Oaklawn Handicap, White Barrio, who's probably best known for winning the 2023 Breeders' Cup Classic, and then Sovereignty, last year's Kentucky Derby winner and Belmont Stakes winner, Traverse winner too, and also Horse of the Year. Those are the top two heavyweights in the race, but also going up against them is Magnitude, fresh off that win in the Dubai World Cup. Also, Baeza, third in the Derby and Belmont Stakes last year before his breakthrough win in the Pennsylvania Derby. Truly a match between those titans of the dirt. And who knows, Horses of the Year could be on the line in this race. And certainly a Breeders' Cup Classic berth on the line in this Breeders' Cup win in year in race could be a good indicator of what we could expect in less than 6 months from now in the Breeders' Cup in November. This weekend is also the last for Aqueduct Racetrack. Opened in 1894, it has seen so many champions grace its dirt and its turf courses. So much history there. This is where Secretariat spent so much time in his career, of course. That beautiful mural of him painted on the wall there, this track. Its biggest race is the Wood Memorial. Also has hosted the Naira Mile and later known as the Cigar Mile because of that champion that raced there. And so many great horses that have been on both the dirt and the turf. Played host to the second Breeders' Cup ever. Probably one of the best known races there, Pebbles, winning the Breeders' Cup turf. So many great moments throughout history for more than 125 years, a century and a quarter. And it is sad to see the track go. Of course, Naira says it made the best business decision possible there in renovating Belmont Park on Long Island. Of course, the two tracks are only 9 miles apart between Long Island and Queens, but very difficult to see Aqueduct go with all the history that it has. And it's sort of the nature of the business that we've seen with some of the larger corporations, whether it's a state entity like the New York Racing Association or a private company. Consolidation has happened in a number of racing jurisdictions for the last couple of decades. Certainly the case is similar there in New York as well, but probably Aqueduct is certainly one of the best known tracks to be shuttering now in the 21st century. Well, I am sorry to end on a somber note. I appreciate you taking the time, though, to join me this week for the Paddock Press Report. New episodes typically every Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Always great to have you joining us for the show. I always appreciate your time. Be sure to like, share, hype, comment, whatever you feel like. We're just happy to have you. So thankful for your time again. Once again, I'm Timothy Leteau. This has been the Paddock Press Report.